Peace, peace, peace. What's going on, y'all? So it's getting a little bit late, but before I go to bed, and today been a rough day. Before I go to bed, I've been meaning to record this video where I wanted to talk to y'all about the phenomena of astral projection. Now, I know that some of y'all might not believe in it. Some of y'all might be curious about it. Some of y'all might want to try it. But I just wanted to ask before I begin, how many of y'all who are watching this video or who will see it later on, how many of y'all believe that it's possible to astral project or have what they call an out of body experience? Or have you ever had one? Not only do you believe in it, but have anybody ever had one? I want to discuss my adventures in astral projection. I wanted to discuss the phenomena of astral projection itself and what I've kind of sort of learned about it over the last couple of years. Um, I know that astral projection is one of those things where science is just catching up to what the ancients already knew. There's a lot of people in the modern world who's talking about astral projection, and believe it or not, there are scientists who are actually exploring the phenomena. Of course, psychologists have been exploring it because for a long time they thought that it wasn't possible, and they thought that astral projection was one of those things that was a delusion of the mind or an illusion of the mind. So they explored it from that perspective. But one thing that they're finding is that with astral projection, when people have these out of body experiences, it kind of allows them to free themselves from trauma. There were some psychologists who were doing experiments with individuals who were deeply traumatized. These individuals during their therapy sessions had what could be described as an out of body experience. They were able to separate themselves from their physical body and look at their situation from the outside. And after the out of body experience, or after they astral projected, they were able to go back to their regular lives almost as if they had instantaneously healed from their trauma. So a lot of scientists are saying they don't necessarily believe in astral projection, but a experience of it, experiencing astral projection or feeling like you astral projected can have psychological benefits. There's another organization called the Monroe Institute. The Monroe Institute, if you guys have ever heard of a famous paper that was funded by the CIA, or you've heard of the Monroe Institute. The paper is called the Gateway Paper. The Gateway paper was in the news, I think, about 2 years ago because there was one page of the Gateway paper that was talking about astral projection. But it was like a page from that paper that was lost for like 50 years or something like that. For 50 years, they had the paper, but that one page that was like all this really important information was just gone. Nobody knew where it was. And so recently they found it in some warehouse somewhere. And it was basically describing how astral projection works, how you excite someone's brain waves or slow down their brain waves to such a point where they could actually tap into different levels of reality and they can actually have astral projection experiences. The Monroe Institute right now is an institute that is doing experimentation with astral projection. They put out music that helps people astral project. They put out DVDs. They actually have a Monroe Institute that does like groups. When I started my job at Capital One 2 years ago, I said, you know what? I want to meet one of these groups. I want to talk to one of these groups. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to because my work hours was the same time where they got together to meet. So I would be at work and I was trying to figure out some kind of a way to communicate with them, but my work hours wouldn't allow it. But I'm gonna definitely try again because I want to talk to one of these groups and see what they're all about and get a little bit more information. But I want to start off by showing you guys this is and there's definitely a connection between the practice of spirituality and astral projection. And I want to start off by sharing my screen with y'all. I'm gonna show y'all something from Mother Tainetta Muhammad of the Nation of Islam. And this is a sister who I've found that she constantly breaks down her experiences with astral projection. I played a piece of this video real quick. This is a video where she's giving a speech, and she's talking about out of body experiences. You can find it right on YouTube. This is Mother Tainetta Muhammad on the Truth Controversy page. But listen to this.
Allah is possessor of power over all things. Now, what might be the thoughts that come to your mind about these winged creatures or these winged messengers or these winged angels that are flying? Think about that. 2, 3, and 4. Some of the interpretation states, perhaps, they don't know, that these 2, 3, 4 may be referring to prayer. And because in the traditional form of prayer, when we're doing salat, there are 2, 3, and 4 rakas. And when you say your prayers diligently and invoke the name of Allah, He takes you on wings, mental, spiritual wings, so that you are in flight and you literally can travel. They call it astral traveling or out of the body, and some of us here have had that experience.
Now, what Mother Tanetta is breaking down, she's breaking down that she's had the experience of astral travel and astral projection. But I wanted to find another video that she did because she breaks down her experiences with it. She's one of those individuals that you hear about when it comes to astral projection who's just naturally gifted with it. I believe she said the first time she astral projected, she didn't know what was happening. She was with the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and she just found herself floating around the room and was afraid that she would go flying through the wall or go floating up to the sky. And she was just floating around the room and didn't understand what was happening. So when she returned to her body, she told the most honorable Elijah Muhammad about it, and she said that she looked at him and he looked at her and just kind of nodded because he understood. He understood that the human mind is capable of a lot of things that people don't know. A big part of the teachings of the Nation of Islam is very mystical. A lot of people focus on their teachings about education and proper diet, the very practical, physical things. But the Nation of Islam teaches a lot of mystical Islamic theology, which I think is very interesting. That aspect of it doesn't really get examined too much because we need, our community needs so much work that everybody's focusing on the practical things, which is, I think it's absolutely fine. But there's a lot of teachings in the Nation of Islam that kind of get ignored, and this is one of them. Also, I wanted to talk about what she was talking about in the video about prayer. And if you don't pray or if you're not a spiritual kind of a person, I think that the main takeaway from that information she was providing was that it takes tremendous amount of mental focus in order to astral project, because she's talking about prayer. Now, if you're praying, really praying diligently, you're focusing your mind in such a way that you're able to block everything else out and you have single pointed focus. Or sometimes if you pray diligently, what happens is that literally the mind kind of shuts off and your mind is completely empty, and not empty in the sense of you not using your intelligence, not empty in a negative sense, but empty in the sense where all unnecessary activity and all negative activity and all conflicted activity is gone. And the only thing that remains is sort of a silence within yourself, and that makes space for new experiences and makes space for the divine to enter into the physical shell. So she's talking about a really deep, involved prayer, not a, hey, God, I don't want to have a stressed out day, or hey, God, can you do this for me? But like a really intense devotional prayer where you're making salat. If you ever saw a Muslim make salat, it's a process. It's not just like some religions. If if you're a Christian, you pray like this, and it's just a real quick process. Thank you, Jesus, for the food we're about to eat, etc., etc. In Islam, there's a process of making salat where you go down on your knees and you say certain words and you stand and you do this and you cross the arms, and it's a whole physical process. And if you are an individual who's ever seen a Muslim make salat, sometimes in certain situations they make salat for hours. So imagine praying and making salat and repeating the same words and the same movements for hours. That will activate certain parts of the brain and allow you to have experiences that you ordinarily wouldn't experience in a normal mindset. There's another part of the brain that's activated, and then when that takes over, it allows you to have new experiences, one of which potentially could be astral projection. There's and I found out recently there's various forms of astral projection as well, which is interesting because when we think of astral projection, we think of this leaving the body. And some civilizations, some spiritual systems, you could like use DMT, you could use acid, you could use shrooms and have these kind of out of body experiences. You can use ayahuasca. I heard that's good for out of body experiences, where the consciousness leaves the body. But there's actually another form of astral projection that I heard about recently. In this book right here, you can get this book. Get this book. It's a short read. It's not long at all. It's called The Four Pillars of Spiritual Transformation by Ibn Arabi, who was a Sufi mystic. I believe he lived in the 1100s. This is a very interesting book, and he breaks down the four things that you need for spiritual transformation, which are silence, seclusion, hunger and vigilance, right? And one of the things that he talks about is a phenomena he refers to as the abdul. Abdul is the plural form of the word badal. And what that word means, or those words mean, is substitute or substitutes. What a substitute is, it's literally a projection of you, but it allows you to be in two places at once. He said that he's had experiences where someone he knew is far away and he would think of them and then they would appear literally like in a physical form. Now, the physical form wouldn't last for a long period of time. It'd be very, very brief, but people were able to project themselves in a 3D space as an abdul, as a substitute. So somebody would be in Spain and their friend would be in Morocco at a Sufi lodge, learning higher levels of consciousness and higher levels of spirituality. And they would think of their friend, and that thought would draw in the Abdul or the Badal, and they would see the substitute, sit and converse with the substitute for a little while. This is a phenomenon I've never heard of before, but I think it's interesting that there's species of astral projection. There's species of projection that we can explore. That's very interesting. I'm a mystical nerd, so that's interesting to me. The idea that a person can become so spiritually refined that they can project themselves, but not just the image, but like a three-dimensional version of themselves somewhere. I've never heard of that before. I've never explored that, but I think I will. I think I will. And also, it's cool because one of the things he talks about in the chapter about hunger, he talks about trying to achieve certain states of consciousness, certain states of awareness, and trying to do certain things spiritually. And he recommends that, first and foremost, you don't, in order to achieve certain states, you need to regulate how much you eat and what you eat. That's very, very, very important. So you might have to fast in order to astral project, or you might have to watch what you eat. And he's saying don't do that. Don't alter your diet or anything like that unless you have a spiritual master with you. So don't do it unless you have a spotter. You don't want to be changing your diet in serious ways to astral project. And you don't want to astral project if you ain't got somebody around you who knows a thing or two about a thing or two that can help you and possibly guide you back. Because these experiments with the mind can really push you over the edge. There's a spiritual teacher named Osho who was talking about how he developed his own kind of meditation to help people confront their trauma and deal with their trauma. It was called, I think it was called dynamic meditation, where he would have people move nonstop and yell and scream and jump around for like a half an hour, and then deep breathing for like 11 minutes, and then you sit down and just you just empty. And they asked him about why he didn't use a different kind of. There's another technique that I guess he used to use, and they were asking him why he no longer used it, and he said that it got to the point where so many people were using it for catharsis, but then the catharsis became overwhelming. They started like breaking down and crying, and they just couldn't stop. So luckily he was an individual who had done these kind of experiments before. He knew how to handle it. He knew how to help the individuals. But yeah, I've heard stories like that where individuals will do these meditation experiments without proper guidance, without a proper guide, and it hurts more than it helps. I was I'm looking back on it, I was extremely fortunate because I didn't have a spiritual teacher, and I still really don't have a spiritual teacher. And a lot of the stuff that I did on my own, and it was sort of like experimentation with my own mind. And I wouldn't recommend that for anybody. But yeah, I was definitely kind of reckless and went into it without a spiritual master. And I was doing fasts. I was trying to astral project. I managed to astral project once. Um, but yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. Matter of fact, let's talk about it now. So these are my experiences with astral projection. I started reading about astral projection a few years ago and listening to YouTube videos where people were talking about astral projection and ways you can do it. I decided I wanted to experiment, see if I could do it. This is before I heard of the Monroe Institute. This is before I started reading about how astral projection or out of body experiences were used, for therapy. And I just wanted to go for it. So what I would do is I would meditate for an hour. I was meditating for about an hour a day at that time. And I stopped. I think at that point I wasn't eating meat. I wasn't eating any meat. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't using any intoxicants, which is good. I was purifying the body. They say travel light, travel light. So when you're gonna astral project, it might be good to eat a little less or to fast if possible. For me, fasting is hard because I'm diabetic, so I might not be able to fast, but I could reduce how much I eat, if nothing else. So at that time, I was traveling light, trying to purify myself. And I would do these 1 hour meditation sessions. And then once after like an hour or so, once I achieved the kind of a trance state and everything was relaxed, I would try to astral project. Now, at the same time, I was trying to learn how to lucid dream because I felt that one would be able to assist in the other. I felt like if I could lucid dream, then I would be able to astral project a little bit easier. Um, so I would, when I would sleep at night, I would do experiments and try to lucid dream. There's a couple interesting lucid dream experiences that I had, and then also I was trying to astral project because I was working third shift. So at night I would try to astral project and then go to sleep in the mornings when I got out of work, and I would try to lucid dream. So here I am at one point, and I'm sitting there trying to astral project, trying to ease out of my body. Because at first I was trying to force my way out of the body, and that didn't work. It was just making me tense, but I wasn't able to get out of the body. And then one day I said, instead of trying to force your way out, ease your way out. So I just would sit and I did my meditation, went into my trance state. And then one night I'm sitting at work in this chair, and I used to work third shift. I used to work with kids, but a lot of those kids would be asleep at night. So I would be able to hear everything that was going on and meditate at the same time. And there was no activity at night. So everything was kind of calm and quiet. So I'll be able to meditate. And I'm sitting there meditating. And as I'm meditating, I realize I'm sitting in my chair and I'm also standing in front of a door with my hand on the doorknob. Like I could feel the doorknob and I could feel my hand on the door. And I'm like, oh, snap, I'm out of my body. But because I was so surprised and so scared that I had actually did it, I opened my eyes and I was immediately back in my body again. So that was like the one time I was able to astral project, but it was only for like a second. It was interesting that I did it, but it was only for a second. But the really interesting thing about it is, and this is why they say don't do it unless you have a master around you. I started having some very bizarre experiences. Me trying to astral project and get out of my body. I don't know. It seemed like it might sound weird, but it seemed like it kind of attracted an energy around me. I'll tell you. I've mentioned it on this channel before, but I'll break it down again another time. But yeah, it was an interesting experience. But once again, if you're gonna astral project, you're gonna try to do anything like that, anything that requires deep spirituality, you got to make sure you travel light, make sure you're getting your fast in, make sure you're reading the scripture, make sure you meditating, make sure you're getting your prayers in, make sure you're on a high spiritual level. Because if you're gonna astral project and leave the body, you never know what kind of energies are waiting around. And when I say energies, I mean like spirits and entities. It could be things waiting around. So you got to make sure you armed up spiritually. Um, and I understand the desire for spiritual awakening and spiritual awareness causes us to be a little bit insistent and reckless. But I recommend just take every precaution because when you're traveling outside of space and time and define the laws of space and time, there's going to be consequences for that. So just make sure that you're taking every imaginable precaution. Make sure you're studying and make sure you have a spotter. One time I had an astral projection party, me and my man Lou and my man Rodney. And this is when I was in Connecticut. I had an office for my business. So I went in there late night, like 7 o'clock at night. It's me and my boys. We was, eating, fruits and vegetables and drinking lots of water. And we had Kambuka and we was trying to make sure we was eating purified stuff and not wearing ourselves down with like toxins and all kinds of food with chemicals in it. And yeah, we sat there and we did like a hour and a half meditation session trying to astral project. I had to guide it. I was a spotter. So I had to guide the meditation session and watch everybody, make sure everybody was good. But the thing about it is that with astral projection, you can't just do it in one take. A lot of times you have to kind of, unless you're an individual who's able to do it just as a natural gift, like Mother Tynetta, or if you have a traumatic experience that allows you to astral project unintentionally, if you want to intentionally astral project, you kind of like have to prepare yourself for it. So the proper nutrition is a major part of it. Meditating consistently, daily for prolonged periods of time, nothing less than an hour. I think it requires nothing less than an hour of meditation daily for at least a month. If you want to do something that major, it's going to take at least a month of hourly meditation per day, if not more than that. There's one YouTube show that I used to watch called man, Sanmat Radhaswamy by a guy named James Bean. and he was doing an episode talking about astral projection, and he was saying that there are techniques for astral projection, but it requires 2 to 3 hours of meditating. So keep in mind that astral projection sounds like it's fun, but you're gonna need to train for it like anything else. You can't just go to the gym and bench press 300 pounds. It's gonna require some training before you're able to get that far. Same thing with astral projection. So it's gonna change. It's gonna require you change your diet. It's gonna require you change how you think and change your relationship to your own mind and to your own body. And also, it's going to require a spotter. So if you want to astral project, I would hold off on it. Don't be so gung ho for spiritual experiences that you put your mind and your safety at risk, um, and your body at risk. You could be pushing yourself too hard. And always make sure you got a spotter. Always make sure it's somebody around you who knows what they're doing. So when I was doing it, I was of course, a major part of what I study is mystical Islam. I'm not a Muslim. I don't follow a religion, but mystical Islam, the mystical knowledge in the Bible, not really Kabbalah so much. I haven't really started studying Kabbalah very much, but like ancient Kemet and African spirituality. At that time, I was studying a lot of African spirituality, ancestor worship, Yoruba, things of that nature. But I didn't have like a priest around me. Now, if you study Yoruba, find a priest. If you study Vodun, find a priest. Find somebody who knows what they're doing that can guide you through the process and walk you through it nice and slow. There are spiritual resources out there. You might have to drive a town over. You might have to drive 2 towns over. You might have to do a Zoom meeting with somebody. There's ways you can reach out to individuals and be like, hey, I'm trying to astral project, or I'm trying to get a deeper spiritual understanding of things. Can you help me out? You know what I mean? There's individuals who have studied astral projection and they know a thing or two. Look for somebody who knows what they're talking about. Learn how to vet people, and be cautious when individuals is asking you for money or asking you for financial information. But yeah, see if you can find somebody who can help you and guide you through it. I myself was doing a lot of experimentation because I'm a nerd and I feel like I'm smart enough where I can handle it, but that's just arrogance. You never know what can happen. You never know what can happen. So make sure you got individuals around you who know what they're doing, who you can trust, and you dig their energy and like their energy. Um, and that's all I really had to say for this evening. That's all I really wanted to talk about this evening. Peace and blessings to all of y'all. If y'all got any questions about my experience with astral projection, or if you want me to do a video about it, I did do a video where I talked about it somewhat, but I can go back into it and go over the details again and add more flavor to it if you want to. If you want to talk about any other spiritual experiences, or if you had out of body experiences, give me a call, give me a holler. Hit me up in the comment section. Peace and blessings to all of y'all, man. I love all of y'all. Be safe.